Before one bound Bible rested on a desk, there were scrolls copied by hand, letters carried between churches, and communities reading sacred texts aloud. This is the Bible, explained, and today we are tracing the patient human journey behind the 66 books received in many Protestant Bibles. This episode is historical and non-denominational in tone. We will look at the Hebrew scriptures, the apostolic writings, the shift from scroll to codex, and the process by which a recognized collection settled over time. The story is not about one secret meeting creating scripture from nothing. It is about preservation, recognition, copying, reading, and worship across generations. The Hebrew scriptures were copied, preserved, read, and transmitted over centuries. Jewish tradition commonly speaks of the law, the prophets, and the writings, a threefold way of referring to sacred books. The law, associated with Moses, stood at the center of Israel's covenant life. The prophets preserved historical and prophetic witness. The writings included psalms, wisdom, and other sacred texts. These books were not produced in one sitting or by one scribe. They emerged through Israel's long life with God: wilderness, monarchy, exile, return, worship, wisdom, and lament. Copyists mattered deeply because a scroll tradition depends on careful hands. The Bible's human history includes ink, parchment, memory, synagogue reading, scribal discipline, and reverence for words received as holy. This is why the physical survival of texts matters. Faithful communities needed readers, teachers, translators, and copyists, but also ordinary hearers who listened week after week and remembered the words. Even when exact boundaries of the collection were discussed, the life of Scripture in worship was already active. People were hearing, memorizing, singing, and being shaped by sacred texts. The New Testament writings came from the world of the apostles and the earliest churches. The Gospels told the story of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. Acts narrated the spread of the message. Letters addressed real communities facing questions about worship, ethics, suffering, doctrine, leadership, and hope. Revelation came in the form of apocalyptic prophecy. These writings circulated because churches needed them. A letter to one community could be copied and read elsewhere. A gospel could be treasured and shared. The process was practical before it was formal. Believers gathered, read, copied, carried, compared, and recognized apostolic teaching. This helps us avoid imagining the Bible as if it dropped from heaven already leather-bound. It came through witnesses, communities, and careful transmission. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. 2 Timothy 3:16 KJV. In its original setting, this verse speaks with special reference to sacred writings known in the life of Timothy, especially the scriptures he had known from childhood. Christians later read it as a key statement about the nature and usefulness of Scripture. The verse does not give a table of contents. It tells us what Scripture is for: teaching, correction, reproof, and instruction in righteousness. Canon history asks a related but different question: which books were recognized as Scripture by the worshiping community? The two questions belong together, but they should not be confused. Inspiration is a theological claim. Canon recognition unfolded historically. The verse also shows why Scripture was never treated as mere religious decoration. It was read to form a people, correct a people, and train a people in the way of righteousness. One fascinating part of Bible history is the early Christian love of the codex, the ancestor of the modern book. Jewish scriptures were traditionally preserved on scrolls, and scrolls remained important. But early Christians adopted the codex widely and early, likely because it made collections easier to carry, search, and read. A codex could hold multiple writings together more conveniently than separate scrolls. This mattered for communities that treasured gospels and letters and read them aloud in worship. The physical form of the book helped shape the experience of Scripture as a collection. The shift from scroll to codex was not merely technological. It was practical devotion. Believers wanted to gather, preserve, and read the apostolic witness efficiently and reverently. A book form also made comparison easier. Readers could move between gospel, letter, and scripture, with a flexibility that shaped Christian study. The recognized New Testament collection settled over time through use, copying, teaching, and broad agreement among churches. Some books were widely received very early, including the 4 Gospels and many Pauline letters. Other books were discussed longer in some regions, such as Hebrews, James, 2 Peter, 2 and 3 John, Jude, and Revelation. This does not mean the early church had no scripture. It means the process of recognizing the full collection had a history. Criteria often discussed include apostolic connection, consistency with the rule of faith, widespread use in churches, and liturgical reading. We should tell this history calmly. It is neither chaos nor mechanical simplicity. It is a patient process of recognition among communities seeking to preserve faithful witness. Regional differences did not mean indifference. They show that early Christians cared enough to ask careful questions about which writings carried apostolic authority and should be read as scripture in the churches. When people speak of the 66 books, they are usually referring to the Protestant Old and New Testament collection. Other Christian traditions count certain books differently, especially regarding the Old Testament and deuterocanonical writings. This episode is not entering a denominational dispute. It is explaining how the widely used 66-book Bible has a human history of preservation and recognition. The unity of the Bible is not that every book has the same genre or human author. It includes law, narrative, poetry, prophecy, gospel, letter, and apocalypse. Its unity is theological and canonical, received through communities that believed these writings bore faithful witness to God's revelation. Holding one Bible today means holding a library that traveled through centuries of copying, reading, and prayer. The modern reader should therefore hold gratitude together with humility, remembering that the Bible came through real communities before it came to our hands. The Bible did not become one book through a single simple moment. The Hebrew scriptures were copied and received over centuries. The apostolic writings circulated among early churches. The codex helped Christians gather texts into book form. The recognized collection settled through use, discussion, and broad reception. Learning that history should not make Scripture feel less sacred. It can make us more grateful for the scribes, readers, pastors, churches, translators, and ordinary believers who preserved the words. The Bible on your table carries a long history of faithful handling. Subscribe to the Bible, explained for more calm, reverent Bible education, and may the Word become clearer, steadier, and nearer as you keep learning.